It is the Do You Rules live version. And I must say, admittedly, super vulnerable, super nervous and excited about right now as this is my first time going live. It is something I have been planning to do, and part of what we talk about on the Do You Rules is meaning what you say and doing what you say you're going to do. So here we are. It is the very first ever live session. I think I'm going to start doing these after each show posts online. And again, the Do You Rules podcast, you can find it on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you stream your podcasts. But last episode we talked about self-esteem. And it's an important topic because as I referenced, the data suggests 85% of us struggle with some sort of self-esteem at some point in our lives. And and self-esteem is actually measurable from the age of 5. So why do I give you this? You know, if this is going to be the Do You Rules and we're talking about optimizing, maximizing, and becoming the best version of yourself you can possibly be, then esteem and self-esteem is, in any model, one of the most vital steps and components of actually becoming the best version of you. Self-actualization. It's a standard term, and I liken it to just being the best you can possibly be, getting the most out of yourself. And to think that 85% of us possibly maybe struggle with esteem and self-esteem at some point in our lives, I think an important topic and one that's fun to discuss and hopefully optimize and maximize for you, right? Like, how can this be valuable for you? How can we have some takeaways that make sense for you? So what I'll do is I'll go over some of the items I addressed in the show, get a little more detail on some main topics, and and close with how I think for this session you can positively enhance your self-esteem. So some of the things I talked about on the show, as far as the idea that you're possibly struggling with self-esteem, and I have my notes here, so I want to make sure I touch on the topics appropriately. A good sign that self-esteem is bothering you, that you're struggling with it, is the idea that you may be overly concerned or even concerned minimally with how something might look to others. Think about that. And how many things do we do where we consider the possibilities of, how is this going to look? Take what I'm doing right now, for example. It's an easy and obvious thing to consider. Not just going live, but making myself vulnerable, exposing myself, and talking. Like, who am I to think that I can do this? And how would it look to those who watch, if anyone even watches? We do this in how we present ourselves physically, what we believe is the best version of ourselves to show to society. And a lot of what we do and don't do is predicated off of, well, what is somebody else going to think about this, or how does this look to somebody else? I think this goes as deep to not just, you might consider haters or people who have maybe are not on your side per se. You might think some people are against you, but I think we fall. I hate to use the word victim, but the idea that someone who's close to you can also have an adverse impact. I'm married. Some of us have significant others. Maybe it's your mother, your father, your sister, your brother. You know, we might be consumed or concerned with what they may think. My podcast is a prime example. A brief story of my wife. She is, she's a fan of me, obviously, right? That should be at least pretty obvious considering that we're married and we have been now for 15 years. But she gives me feedback on my podcast, and one of the things she told me recently was it's difficult to give you full feedback and say I'm a fan per se, because I hear you talk every day, and because I'm listening to podcasts on my downtime, and because I'm looking for something that is specific to me to kind of get me through, maybe I just don't feel like listening to you and your voice, and that's real, and it's something that if you don't have the proper esteem, it can break you in a way. Just think about somebody who means a lot to you giving you some feedback that doesn't align with 1,000% positivity. You may take that the wrong way, not see it as constructive, and it could break you down. I believe when you have the proper esteem, you take it just as that, as criticism that can help you. I personally don't need my wife to be a fan or to subscribe or or to think that I could be a top podcaster or influencer or whatever this is. It's me. I do it for me, and that's enough. I have enough confidence in myself to know that while I do this, of course, for my family, I'm not limited, even if they don't believe necessarily. I believe, and that's enough. So that's one of the things where, and it's easy, right? We struggle with that possibly maybe in our lives. Maybe that contributes to the 85%. Another another scenario that's part of the equation as far as possibly struggling with self-esteem, because we taking the world in a sensory way, right? The basic senses, the five senses: hearing, seeing, touching, tasting, all that other good stuff. 80% of how we perceive the world is visual. And so if that's a fact, then consider that society has an idea for what is successful and what's not. And society will tell you, depending on what you look like physically, depending on what your bank account looks like, depending on your profession, all those things line up to success or not. And it's hard in a social media driven world, which essentially means we have exposure to a lot more things we've ever had exposure to visually. And the likelihood is that we follow people who have attained a level of success that better aligns with society's models visually. And we're overstimulated by these models of success that we're unable to then rationalize outside of what we have in our bank accounts, what we possibly are driving, what our homes possibly look like, what kind of shoes we're wearing. It's not to say that those things aren't valuable, and I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't strive to attain and accomplish some of those things. If it's material, it has a price. If you want it, get enough money to buy it. And there's ways to do that positively and productively. And I believe if that's what you are and who you are and it makes you feel good, great. If it doesn't, great. You don't necessarily have to align with those things. And it's one of those right, wrong, and indifferent things where, again, you should have a vision for what your success is. And society, because they market, promote, and continue this machine of marketing madness, it can really have an impact on our self-esteem as far as I don't have what society says success looks like. But ultimately, you define what success is. That's why we do you on the Do You rules. Another thing, and this is the last thing I'll talk about before I get into some ways to practice esteem. People pleasing, the ability to say no. It ties into prioritizing yourself. And a lot of times we get into a rhythm of surrounding ourselves with people who we want to accommodate and who we want to make feel good. And often it may not be reciprocal. And I don't want to assume or judge, but even if it's not, or it is, how much time and bandwidth are you allocating to these people, to these resources, the people who you can't say no to? And it could be something as simple as, hey, what are you doing on Saturday? You want to go to the mall? You want to go to a diner? You want to go have a friend's date? You want to go play poker? Whatever it is. And maybe you want to do these things and maybe you don't. But if you find yourself doing a lot of these things because you don't want to hurt someone in the process, I'm not suggesting you should hurt someone. What I'm saying is you shouldn't be concerned with hurting someone if it hurts yourself. You should be in relationships. You should be involved in scenarios where you can say no. And even if the person is kind of hurt by it, they can accept it and say, well, all right, cool. If that's not what you want to do, then it's all good. So getting into a rhythm of people pleasing, the idea that you can't say no, the idea that you're over leveraging yourself and compromising your time that could be for you to be a better version of yourself, to achieve the level of success you want, could be hindering your esteem, not giving you enough time to kind of practice on yourself. So to wrap it up, 3 things here. You worry too much about how it looks to others. We are reacting to visual stimuli, things that society deems successful, and we're trying to align with it because we believe that's what success is, and it's typically superficial because it's material. And not to say you can't have it or that you shouldn't want it. There's a reason why people are on whatever they're on, and it's because it's available. If you want it, get it, but for you, nobody else, just for you. And then getting into a rhythm of people pleasing and can't say no. some of the things you want to stay away from an esteem perspective that could possibly be limiting you on ensuring that you feel good about how you're living your life every day. All right. I want to talk and touch on some things. And again, you can find everything here on the Do You Rules podcast on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, cool. Let's get into three ways. I talked about more on the show, but three ways where you can boost self-esteem. The first thing is, and I've just actually introduced this into my practice. I call it mirror mindfulness. Mirror mindfulness. And it's your ability to look yourself in the face like, hey, how you doing, sexy? And give yourself some confidence. Talk to yourself. And I'm very cautious and cognizant about immediately diving into affirmations because I believe you have to, like, your affirmations have to have substance. And the more you work on you, the more you can affirm what you're working on. But just looking in the mirror every day and saying, I'm phenomenal, I'm great, after a while, it's going to have the adverse effect because what are you doing to be phenomenal and great? You actually have to execute on some things. But I do believe in mirror mindfulness from this perspective. Most of us, particularly if you're my age group, I'll be 42 in a couple of weeks here. It's close. It's Thanksgiving week. I'm a December birthday boy. And as a professional, you should know what your role and responsibility is, and if you're carrying out those respective roles and responsibilities effectively. And your boss or your superior should be talking to you regularly about how you're performing. It's a one-on-one, right? It's the idea that you're going over and reviewing who you are, how you're contributing, and what makes you successful or not. So mirror mindfulness, and I typically give myself about 10 minutes a day to have a real conversation with, what do I believe my roles and responsibilities are? What do I believe I should be contributing as a professional? What should I contribute in my role? Like, what are my roles in life? If you're a husband, if you're a wife, if you're a father, if you're a mother, if you're a friend, anything that you do to impact your world, mirror mindfulness is your opportunity to build self-esteem by talking yourself through it. And it should be dialogue. That's why you look at yourself, eyes open. It's somewhat a form of meditation, except you're not, it's inner work in that you are working on who you are internally, but it's eyes open. You don't want to have eyes closed because you want to recognize yourself. And it's self to self, mirror mindfulness. How are you doing? How are you feeling? I talked about when I opened this, I said I would go live. Your tasks, your response, I said I would do this. Did I do it? When you start to have those conversations with yourself, you'll start to build the type of esteem you need to continue to be successful in whatever it is that makes you you. And that's the key component, is doing you for you. We talked about some of the difficulties with self-esteem is that the visual stimuli, what you see, 80% visual, how society tells you should be successful. Mirror mindfulness is your opportunity to get down with you and just get straight into what you believe makes you successful or not. All right. Moving on. I feel like I went on that for a while there. Guarding your energy space. Guarding your energy space. It goes into somewhat around people pleasing and saying no, but I think it's a lot deeper than that. Guarding your energy space. I'm going to talk about soon energy vampires and how they infiltrate your space and they consume your bandwidth, your energy, and that's important. What this amounts to in simple terms is be careful what you watch, like what you listen to, what you consume should all really be scrutinized, and you should not take for granted what you're ingesting, what you're putting into your brain, what you're putting into your thoughts, what you're doing with your time. So I actually wrote it down here. If it ain't worth listening to, don't listen to it. If it ain't worth watching, don't watch it. And if they ain't worth being around, don't be around them. Simplest way to talk about guarding your energy space. And finally, it wouldn't be the do you rules without getting into what I believe is the most important step in becoming the best possible you can become. And and getting the most out of yourself, which is be obsessed with you. You should 1000% be obsessed with who you are. You should 1000% be obsessed with what you want to be. You should 1000% be obsessed with what makes you feel good about producing whatever it is you produce in life in all aspects. And a lot of what this trends into when we think about self, like what makes you, it's typically where you are emotionally, where you are relationally, where you are professionally. You want those finances in there, fine. Where you are financially. But if any one of those things is not aligned with what you want for yourself, then you should be obsessed with achieving it. And the more that you focus in on that on a day to day, then the better off you'll be at maximizing yourself and and possibly producing the version of you that you feel 1000% good with. And why not? If all we have is right now and all you have is all you need, then why not feel good about what you're doing? So that's the wrap. I'll close it out again with the three simple ways to boost self-esteem. Mirror mindfulness, have a conversation with yourself. Don't be shy. You can tell yourself you look good. You can say, hey, big sexy, and all those good things, but also have a conversation about what you're producing, what are your roles and responsibilities, and are you keeping yourself honest? The second thing is guard your energy space. If it ain't, well, here we go. If it ain't worth listening to, don't listen. If it ain't worth watching, don't watch it. If they ain't worth being around, don't be around them. And then finally, be obsessed with you, because why not? That is what we do. I hope this helps. It's all about self-esteem to becoming self-actualized and getting the most out of you, because you don't know how much time you have, man. So until the next time, may everything you desire come to you exactly as you deserve. Stay rich.